Hi everyone and welcome back to another video, and in today's video I'm going to teach you guys a very simple, easy and solid setup that you can play against the London system. But before we begin, I'd like to recommend you subscribing to the channel. If you are not subscribed yet, just click the button down below, and I post videos every day with chess tips for improvement in general. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. If my opponent is playing d4, I don't know if I'm playing online, I don't know if I'm going to play against, let's say, like a Queen's Gambit, or maybe if my opponent's going to play Knight Out. So I just go for a d5 move, which is a typical move. I'm waiting to see what my opponent is for. So if they play bishop to f4 here, I know that they're going to go for the London system. So I can predict the next moves, like 6 or 7 moves. They're going to play pawn here, bishop out, knight out, bishop out. Knight comes here, the pawn comes here, they're going to castle. I can predict like 6 or 7 moves here because they always play the same moves. And what London system players want to do is they want to keep the locked position. The position has to be locked so they can develop their pieces and use their pieces to attack. So what we're going to do is we're going to disrupt those plans by playing a move that they are not expecting, and which is played just like 6 or 7% of the time according to the Lichess database. That move is c5. Your opponent is not expecting that because that's not how usually typically people play against the London, and this is already challenging this pawn here in the center. So if they keep playing what they are used to, they're going to play pawn to e3 here, but if they take, it's not a big deal. This looks like a gambit, but sooner or later you're going to just push here and take this pawn back. So this is not exactly a gambit, okay? And you're going to have this C open file in all situations in this setup. You're always going to have the C file to put your rook here and try to attack on this open file. So you're going to disrupt White's plans of keeping the position locked. You're going to open up the position no matter what happens here. If they don't take the pawn here, you are going to take and have the open C file and half open file, let's say. And if they take it, you just take back and you still have the half open file here to attack later on. And you might try to trade this London bishop later on too. So maybe disrupt the castled king here. The idea here is to just disrupt White's plan. The most commonly played move here is e3. And as they play that, you're going to take the pawn. So you have the open file, the half open file here. And they're going to take back, and after they do that, you just play knight to c6, hitting this pawn right here. So they're probably going to try to defend it by playing moves that are typical to the London, like c3, knight f3, which are moves that protect this pawn. And if they go for knight f3, which is the most common move here, as soon as you see this knight moving, you're going to pin it in this situation. So the idea here is if they play something silly here, you can actually take this knight and maybe potentially take this pawn over here. Be careful, the queen might guard it, but they play something like this. You can take, they will be forced, maybe take with the queen. If they take with the pawn, you can just have like, they're going to be completely destroyed. Double pawn here, isolated pawn over there. So if they do something like this, you can just take, and if they take back, you have this move. So keep your eyes open to that. So probably you see your opponent playing like this to break the pin, or maybe this to pin your knight, or sometimes maybe developing this knight here, which is a typical move in the London system, but the most common move here is actually following the typical plan in the London, which is c3, defending this pawn, so they don't have to worry about that anymore. And here, what you're going to do is you're going to play e3, closing your pawn chain. And here you have a very solid pawn chain, and your bishop is out of the pawn chain. Very interesting position here. And your next moves are going to be developing your knight, your bishop, and castling, not in the exact same order. We're going to wait to see what our opponent's going to do first. And then you always have this open file to put your rook in and attack. Okay? So if your opponent goes for, let's say, knight b to d2 here, you can develop your bishop to d6. And now the bishops are staring each other, and let's wait and see who's going to take first. You're going to wait for your opponent. If they take, you just take back with your queen. You are putting your queen in a more developed position here. It's more active. And if they play bishop to d3, which is a very typical move in the London anyway, you're going to develop your knight to f6 and castle. This is the typical idea. So you always have this open c file to attack with your rook. You can also bring maybe your queen over here. It's an option as well. So it's very easy game here. Just bring your rook. You can throw like a minority attack here against the queen side, which is very easy to play. But if your opponent doesn't take your bishop in this position, if they just drop back, you can wait a little bit until white castles first, and then you take this bishop, forcing doubled pawns here. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna develop your knight, right? You're gonna play knight to f6 here, develop your knight, and wait until white castles first. After, let's say, bishop to d3, you castle, and after they castle, now you go and grab their bishop. And after that, they're gonna have doubled pawns here in front of the king. This is not like a huge weakness. King's still pretty safe here, but it might be like a liability in the long run. So you have the same open file here. You can bring your rook, and you can attack here on the queen side as well. So that's what you're gonna do in this case. Of course, your opponent doesn't have to go for that, right? They don't have to play knight here. They can go ahead and defend with the pawn. So it's a little bit different because the knight is not here to be pinned. So you're just going to play bishop to f5 here. If you play your bishop here, well, bad idea. So you're going to play bishop to f5 here. And after they move the knight, now it's silly to just move it here and waste another tempo to pin it. So you're just going to play e6 here. So you close your pawn chain, you have your knight out. This bishop is here instead of here, but the position is pretty much the same. You have the open file as well. After bishop to d3, don't just take it right away, because then you're going to help white develop. So what you're going to do here is play very sneaky move, knight g to e7, because now you're going to wait for white to take, and as they take, you take back with your knight, and now you have a very well-developed centralized knight here, and white's queen is back here in the starting position. So you don't initiate the trades, wait for your opponents to trade so you can develop your pieces. So if they don't, in this case, and they castle, now you can go ahead and take, because after queen moves and takes back, you have this interesting move, knight to g6, hitting the bishop. Of course, you can just go here as well if you want, but I like this move, knight to g6, because it hits the bishop and forces the bishop to move again. And all London system players, they have this learned. When this London bishop is attacked, they always retreat it back to g3. This is basically like a key move for them. And what you're going to do here is you're going to play bishop to d6. And now there is another staring contest here. If your opponent takes, you know what to do. You just take back with the queen and castle, and you have a very interesting game. Again, open file for you, half open file for you to attack. The pawns can run here on the queen side. You have a very similar position to the previous one. You're always going to have like this half open file to attack. But if they don't take, if they play, let's say, knight b to d2, then you can go ahead and take, because this king is already castle, and you're going to have a similar position. They're going to have to take back. They might take back with the f-pawn here, actually. Both are possible. And again, they have the doubled pawns, and you can castle. You have a better pawn structure. You can attack right here. Easy gameplay, just bringing this here. The queen can come here with the rook, or maybe you can play queen here, hitting this pawn. Many opportunities and possibilities here. Okay, so what is actually possible as well after this is, instead of just playing here, they can go ahead and take your pawn, right? So instead of just playing that move, they can take your pawn. But don't worry, you're going to take this pawn back. What you can do here first is play knight to c6. This is going to hold this pawn right here. It's not going to move because the knight is blockading the pawn. And after, let's say, knight f3, which is a typical move in the London system anyway, they're going to play this move. You have two options. I like playing this bishop right here, but there are drawbacks as well, because they might play knight here, hitting your bishop. And if they take your bishop, let's say you play, for example, e6, they take your bishop, you take back with the pawn, you're going to have doubled pawns here on the f file. You just have to be aware of that, but that's not what usually happens. So if you play bishop to f5 here, the most common move is e3, and then you just close with e6, and you have a very similar position. If they play bishop to d3, in that case, you have to take, right? Playing the knight here is not really good. So you're going to take this bishop, and after they recapture, you just take your pawn back, and you're going to have your pawn back safely. And you follow up with very simple positional moves. They castle, you develop your knight, just like we did before. And after they develop their knight, you can castle, and you have, again, very similar position. You have the open file here. You still have this bishop, though. Nothing stopping you from just trying to trade it, but you don't have to if you want. Another idea after knight f3 here in this position is closing the diagonal right away. The only drawback of this, instead of this bishop being here outside of the pawn chain, it is in the starting square, very passive and sleeping there. But at least you don't run in this knight idea, trying to hit and take your pawn and disturb your very nice pawn chain here. So at least this bishop is safe here. So after e3, you can play bishop takes. So you take your pawn right back, and you are not down a pawn anymore. And after, let's say, bishop to b5, trying to pin your knight, you can go ahead and play this if you want, kicking this bishop right away. Or if you don't want to, you can just play knight e7, defending your knight, developing a piece. And after castles, I don't know, maybe you can play bishop to d, you can kick your bishop right, kick the bishop right in this position. After they move back, you have a very similar position to the previous one, this open file. You might try to play this, maybe put the bishop here, bring the rook to the open file, half open file, and try to attack. So it's always possible to have some very interesting games against the London system if you play this move c5 that your opponents are not expecting. So if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like down below, a comment as well, and I see you guys as always in the next video.